The storm had been gnawing at the horizon for hours before it finally reached Elias' cabin. He had seen its bruised clouds roll down from the mountains like a living wall, and he knew from a lifetime in the northern woods that once it broke, nothing human or animal would be walking in it safely. He had sealed the shutters, stoked the fire, and settled in with a book, expecting nothing more than the long growl of thunder and the familiar creak of old timber holding back the wind. That was when he heard the knocking. It wasn't the sound of branches against the siding, nor the panicked scratching of an animal. It was 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. Elias froze, the fire crackling too loudly in the silence that followed. His cabin was miles from the nearest town, the road washed out weeks ago. No one should be here. He pulled on his coat and opened the door against the teeth of the storm. On the stoop stood a girl. She couldn't have been more than 8, hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes wide and unblinking despite the sheets of rain. She said nothing, only stood there trembling. "Good God," Elias muttered. "Come inside before you freeze." She obeyed instantly, stepping into the warmth without a word. Elias shut the door and studied her. She wore a thin, pale dress, far too light for the weather. No coat, no boots, no pack. She looked like she'd stepped out of nowhere, as if the forest had grown her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Elias asked, crouching to her height. Her lips parted, but the word that came out was strange. Syllables that didn't fit the shape of any language he knew. Still, her tone was clear. She was answering. "You're lost then," Elias guessed. "Don't worry. You're safe here. I'll keep the fire going." The girl sat by the hearth, staring into the flames with unnerving intensity. She neither cried nor smiled, only tilted her head as though listening to something Elias couldn't hear. By the second day he had given her food, bread, broth, dried venison, and she ate mechanically, not ravenous but dutiful, like eating was part of some performance. She watched him constantly, her eyes following his every movement. Elias felt both protective and uneasy, as though housing some ancient spirit in the shape of a child. That night, when he thought she had fallen asleep on the cot, he caught her standing at the window, whispering. Not to him, not to anyone visible, but into the storm. The syllables were the same as before. Alien, fluid, heavy with consonants his ears couldn't parse. On the 3rd morning the storm had passed. The forest steamed under sunlight, every leaf dripping. Elias stepped outside to check for damage, breathing in the wet earth. When he turned back, the girl was standing in the doorway, barefoot, her expression finally different. She looked sorrowful. "You're leaving?" Elias asked, trying not to sound as though he dreaded the answer. The girl blinked once. Then in perfect, unaccented English she said, "You did not fail." Elias' skin prickled. "What do you mean, fail?" She stepped onto the porch, raising her face to the sky. And then the air tore open. It wasn't a sound so much as a sensation, the sky itself peeling back like fabric, revealing a vast geometry of light beyond. Shapes moved within it, incomprehensible and immense. The girl turned, her pale face suddenly ageless. "We test for compassion," she said. "Worlds are spared or destroyed based on this measure. You were selected at random, Elias Carter. For 3 days, your choices were observed." Elias staggered back. "You're telling me this whole planet is on trial? Because I gave you shelter. Because you gave without certainty of return," she corrected gently. "Because you did not see me as burden or threat or aberration. You saw only a child in need." The vast light pulsed above, and Elias felt as though millions of eyes were on him. "What happens now?" he whispered. The girl smiled faintly for the first time. "Now you and your species continue. And you will not remember this. The light swelled, then vanished. The forest was whole again, silent except for birdsong. The girl was gone. Only the empty cot by the fire remained, and Elias, heart pounding, with a vague conviction that he had dreamed something profound. But he did remember. Not clearly, not with every detail intact, but with enough. 3 days later, as he sat on the cabin step watching the sun sink, he caught himself thinking about eyes behind the sky, about trials unseen. He could no longer shake the feeling that humanity walked every day under the weight of an unseen judgment. And yet he smiled, because he had passed. Middle expansion, the weight of the test. Elias' life did not immediately change. He still rose early to split wood, still hunted deer and patched his roof when the weather demanded. But a subtle awareness followed him now, as though his every act might echo far beyond him. When he hiked into town for supplies, he saw people differently. The cashier's weary smile, the old man fumbling with his wallet, the children chasing one another across the gravel lot. He wondered how many of them would have opened the door that night. How many would have turned away? He began to talk more to strangers, small kindnesses. Helping a woman load her truck, fixing a loose strap on a boy's pack. Each time he thought of the girl's words. You did not fail. But the memory troubled him too. Why him? Why not a family in the city, or a leader, or a soldier? Why a hermit in the woods with a quiet past and no one to vouch for him? One evening, nursing a cup of tea, he said aloud, "If you're still watching, I hope you're not relying on just me." There was no answer. Only wind in the trees. Climax. Revelation and resolve. Weeks later, as autumn painted the forest, Elias woke in the night to find the cabin filled with a soft glow. The girl stood again at the foot of his bed, though she looked older now, closer to 13, her features sharper. "You were not supposed to remember," she said. Elias sat up, heartbeat drumming. "And yet I did. That is, an anomaly." Her head tilted, the way it had when she first studied his fire. "It may be why you were chosen." Chosen for what? She considered him for a long moment. "We are many, Elias Carter. We test countless worlds. Most do not pass. Those that do become significant. Not all are aware of this. But you are. Which means you may guide your kind when the day arrives that the veil is lifted." Elias felt the weight of her words like a mountain settling on his shoulders. "You're saying this test, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning." Her silence was confirmation enough. What happens if we stumble? If we forget compassion? Then you will not continue. The words were simple, terrifying. Elias closed his eyes. He thought of wars, greed, cruelty. But he also thought of hands extended to strangers, of shelters in storms, of bread broken between those who had little. "Then I'll keep remembering," he said at last. "Even if no one else does. I'll remind them." For the first time, the girl's expression softened into genuine warmth. "Then perhaps we did not choose wrongly." And just as before, she was gone, leaving only the whisper of something vast listening still. Ending, humanity's quiet champion. Years passed. Elias aged, his beard turning white, his cabin slowly sagging against time. But the conviction never left him. He became known in the nearby town as the man who always had room at his table, who fixed roofs for widows and taught children to fish even when his hands